Hello, and thanks to everyone who got here early. We're going to wait a couple moments just to let everyone else join. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar today. And now let's kick this thing off. We're excited to announce the latest version of Bacon Unlimited, Bacon version 4.1. And today we're going to be discussing features in Bacon like remoting and patching and profiles. But before we get started, I want to introduce our fabulous speakers today. First, we have John Marcato, our co-founder and CTO at Bacon Unlimited. Hey, John.
Hey, Caitlin. Hey, everybody in webinar land. Thanks for coming.
And we also have Dave Adekoya, a senior engineer at Bacon Unlimited. Hey, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And lastly, I'm Caitlin LeBlanc, and I'm a member of the business development team. But before we get going with the demo, I want to call out that we do have a chat feature for all of you to ask any questions you have during the session. So don't be shy and get those questions rolling in. Also, at the end of the webinar, we will be launching a survey, and we love and appreciate your feedback. It allows us to tailor the webinars and product for all of you. And whoever fills out that survey will also be getting an awesome Bacon t-shirt. I'm actually wearing one right now and can confirm they are super soft and comfy, so you won't want to miss out. Now, let's throw out some polls. Reno, can you send those out for me?
All right. Which OSs do you want to manage with Bacon? All? Maybe just one? No wrong answer. So just watching the things come in. A lot of Windows, about half as many Macs, a bunch of Linux, and a lot of iOS today, which is great. So pretty much on the same, close to what we'd say about Mac. So that is unsurprising, and we certainly will make sure we reference all of these things, although we won't be as focused on MDM today because we presented on that last month. You can see that on our YouTube page, and also would be very happy to do an in-person demo, or a online demo, I should say, one-on-one demo, anytime you'd like. So if you have specific questions about that, we can certainly jump into it. But I think for right now, let's launch one more poll, if you wouldn't mind, Reno. All right, how many tools does it take to manage your servers, workstations, laptops, and mobile devices? This is always a really interesting one. We do this one probably quarterly, we ask this question, and it's always heavily weighted towards the higher numbers, which appears to be pretty true today. Luckily, nobody has 0 tools, so that's good. But it looks like 3/4 of the people are using somewhere between 3 and 5, and maybe as many, more than 5, to manage their endpoints and mobile devices. And that can be very challenging. So we'll be talking about that today too. So thanks for answering those polls, everybody. And these are the kinds of issues that Bacon was designed to do. So Dave, maybe we'll kind of run through the top down of the product, of what it does, just to introduce people who haven't seen it before. But I think we want to save the balance of the time to have Dave give a quick overview to familiarize with the actual platform itself, and then even more to dive into a few features, kind of a new way we wanted to do it so that we could get a little more time on some focus features. And then if it's features that you want to see, we can do follow-ups, or you can see them in our YouTube page, which does have 80 some odd videos at this point. So I think if you wouldn't mind bringing up the next slide, Dave, let's give the overview. And this is going to be very high level, just top to trees explanation of what Bacon is. And then Dave's actually going to show the real interface. I think it's a little more interesting to try to keep the slides to a minimum. So Bacon Unlimited is a cross-platform, ultra-secure endpoint management system. It was designed because a lot of the tools in the marketplace, even if they've gotten a fresh paint job, they're really quite old code bases. They lack a lot of key features, and as we've seen in the news over the last few years, many of them have been hacked fairly easily due to really a lack of focus and security, and maybe not really knowing what's under the hood with the team that's remaining there. So that made it pretty challenging, I think, to use a lot of the tools that were out there. The other thing I've sort of seen as a trend is that some of the tools are really just geared towards managed service providers who deal with small customers. And so when you really need to do something important to automate or save a huge amount of time in your environment, it might be too boxed in, right? Too closed of a system to allow those kinds of things to happen. So this tool was designed to deal with some very large environments or complex environments in addition to just simple tasks. So the goal was to make a tool that would give as many of the common functions that we in IT would do on endpoints as easily as possible, but remain capable of doing more complex, sort of diverse functions. And so we'll be talking about one of the key ways we do that today towards the end when we talk about profiles. But we'll be focused a lot on showing the easy ways that we can do remoting. It's something we built in to the product in early 2022, and it's been a real big hit for us. But we're also going to talk about all the dynamic ways that you can control patching and really get a hold of the system. What we're probably not going to dive as deep into today is some of the side features and even a couple of the core features. So you'll just have to take my word for it that we have them. But our deep monitoring capabilities and our ability to get great visibility throughout, you'll see some of that in the overview, but we won't go too in depth. Also, our ability to install anything from anywhere, so any packages that you want to run, or even complex multi-file installers, we can do that with great ease. We can also do remote scripting. We can write scripts right inside the platform, and it's extremely simple to distribute those out. And most importantly, when you do all of these things, you get really clear, near real-time logging of what's happening. So you actually get the feedback you need in case maybe your script wasn't written perfectly, or your package was damaged, or didn't have the right flags, or something like that. We're going to give you easy ways to iterate quickly and overcome your problems. So cross-platform, Mac, Windows, Linux, and now Apple mobile devices, Android to come sometime late 2023. Third-party integrations for inventory and ticketing, plus an API in case you have a custom system you want to deal with. And just the ability to go really big if you need to. If you need tons of rules or tons of alerts, or just need to manage tons of systems, we can do all of that. So it's part of the benefit of writing in more modern languages. It's a lot more alive, and it's a lot easier to make new features and capabilities. So we hope you find our interface intuitive. It is intended to be something that you can figure out without going to the manual, and that's kind of the goal. So with that, that's kind of the overall intro. Dave, are you ready to bring up the platform and start giving the intro into what it does, and maybe spend a few minutes on that, and then we'll jump into some key features.
Yeah, I'm all set.
All right, take it away, sir. Thank you.
All right, everybody, so we're gonna go ahead and start off with our overview page here. So this is what you'll see when you first log into Bacon. It's gonna give you a quick look at what we're managing for you. So we start off with alert here. These are alerts that can be custom configured, so you're able to set your own rules, which we'll see shortly. And then once those trigger, you can mouse over here to see what triggered. Next up, we have endpoints. This will just give you a quick online, offline indicator, which endpoints you have online, which are offline. We have a view for what kind of operating systems you're running. So in this case, we have a lot of CentOS in our environment here. Next up, we have another one for patches. So how many patches or packages do you have available to deploy in your environment? Then we have antivirus protection. The nice thing here is we're able to specify both processes and services. This is something that you can choose inside the product on your own. So you can come in, set your various AV services, and then it'll contribute to these or to this protected versus unprotected counter. And lastly, we have encrypted hard drives. So how many hard drives of all these machines do you have that are actually encrypted? So for Windows folks, it's going to be BitLocker. We also have FileVault for Mac OS. And since we support Linux, there's other various, or a lot of, let's say, different ways to encrypt on Linux. And those will all report back with this counter here. And one nice thing to note too is these are click-through. So if I was to click on connected here, it'll actually go through and filter those endpoints by the ones connected for me. Next up, as we work our way down the nav bar, we have monitoring. So this is where you would come to set rules and to view alerts. So you'd set your rule here. That could be something like high CPU usage indicators, or a service stopped running, or maybe an endpoint's not protected with AV. And then it triggers an alert over here. And so you can go through here to see which endpoints have triggered the alert, what the alert actually, or excuse me, the rule, and what the rule actually was, and the severity. So here we see we have some profiles that we've configured to trigger these, but there's also possible to trigger rules that we've created in the other screen. Next up, we have a knock dashboard. This allows you to get a visual indicator of what we're managing in your environment. And as you can see, I can actually click up top here to change what types of machines are being displayed here, and then enable a scroll by. So it'll just keep looping, and then once it gets to the bottom, it'll loop back up to the top. Next up, we have our endpoints table. So this is where you're going to spend a lot of time in Bacon. There's a lot of different columns we're pulling back here. And as we keep going, we can actually take a look at an endpoint here shortly and get into remoting. Next up, we have groups. So Bacon has both static and dynamic groups. Static groups are going to be exactly what you think. You add a machine to the group and it stays in that group until someone removes it. Dynamic groups are a little bit different. Those allow you to specify different criteria. And then once the machine meets those criteria, while we were doing in the endpoint table of filters, it'll join or leave that group. So that could be something like if it has a V or not, or if it's on a certain IP range. And so that allows you to be very flexible when you're pushing out jobs or profiles and stuff like that. Next up, we have MDM devices. I'm actually going to switch over to another environment just to show you what those look like. So here's where we'd show all of the mobile devices. So your iPhones, your iPads, your Apple TVs, those are going to be here. When we look at those, we're able to pull back some mobile specific data. So you have like battery indicators, we have network indicators that'll show you your different IDs on the device, that kind of thing. Next up, we have our software table. So this is going to show the software installed on not only your workstations and servers, but also those mobile platforms. So we see we have Mac OS here, we've got Windows, but we'll also have iOS available too. So you can see the name of the software, the version, then how many endpoints or devices are running that similar software. We also have a services table, and so this will show you what your workstations and servers are running from a service angle. And as we drill down into here, we could stop services, start them, stuff like that. Except we have patching. This again is going to be one thing that we spend some extra time on, so I'll be kind of brief here. This is where you would go to patch not only your workstations and servers, but also those mobile devices. Let me switch my environment a little bit here again. There we go. So let's go to repository. This is where you go to deploy files or deploy installers, right? So you can select your files here and then push them out to machines. And then if you have a multi-file installer, let's say like an Office install where you have the setup executable, an XML, and a script, you can actually select multiple files here and bundle those together so that you can push that installer out. We have profiles and states. We're going to spend some time on this as well. So you can think of states as individual configurations. This can be things like starting services, setting registry keys, setting LGPOs, or even manipulating firewalls. And we'll be able to show some of that off later on. We also have MDM profiles. As John said, we did a couple webinars on that, so that's going to be the best place to kind of get a look there. Those would apply to those iOS devices. Bacon by default has a very robust logging system. So anytime you push jobs out, it's going to tell you exactly where this or what the status of those jobs were. So what machines did they go to? What was the status? And give you some pretty verbose output to help you troubleshoot or confirm that your configurations are in place as expected. And then lastly, you have some pretty extensive RBAC support. So we're able to create users either in Bacon or pull them in via LDAP. And then you can assign those users roles. And these roles can be applied to groups to say you can only patch a specific dynamic group, or maybe even a static group, that kind of thing. All right, so that's most of the quick walkthrough, John. How about we get started with remoting?
I love it. So thanks for giving the quick overview. I think you just do it so much more efficiently than I do. So I greatly appreciate that. One of the things I think a lot of people think is, why do I need remoting in the same platform? Who cares if I use a third party? And certainly if you like doing it that way, there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the problems that we found was coming up a lot in our other consulting company where we sort of devised Bacon, was this idea that we'd have to change tools to continue with our problem-solving workflow. So one of the things that we've seen some tools do is, add some other or a couple of other remoting tools that already exist. And so, in that case, you have to get it all configured and make it work. And you also have to pay extra licenses for that. We added our remoting as no additional change in our pricing. It's not an extra license or anything like that. And what we really wanted to do here was achieve something a little bit more modern in terms of how it worked. So it's an HTML5 WebSockets-based remoting capability. And we also wanted to integrate it into our system. So if you're in the logs, let's say, looking at the 1,000 machines you just patched and 999 work and one happens to fail, well, I can tell you from using Bacon all the time, it's probably something broken on the system. Maybe you're out of space or someone closed the computer and turned it off right in the middle of patches or something like that. And we'll give you a lot of good information and logs about that. But it's very common that you're going to want to go and check on the machine directly. So with a simple click, you'd end up on this page. This is a details page for this one specific machine called demo W10-W10, which you see at the top there. All of these active tiles that you see, the first one's called system and it's in green, you can click over those and you'll get details in the bottom half of the page that go into more rich information about what's actively there in the tile. So you can find out about your system information, you can find out about disks and network and logs that are specific to this one system or services and patches. And most importantly, all of that is searchable and easy to understand. So you can really dig into the heart of what's going on in this system. Every patch you install, every third-party piece of software, it will all be listed here in an easy-to-use, contiguous way. It'll look just like all the other pages that we go to. So Dave's, kind of doing some little demos there, showing if we use quick search to find, a particular app. He typed in Edge. There's 2 apps that apply. that could be really helpful. You could uninstall from here or find other endpoints that have the exact same version of software. So it's really, really easy and functional to jump through here. But I think one of the number one things people will need to do if they're coming to look in a detailed way at this machine, maybe from the scenario I said, like the logs, or maybe just off of the endpoints page or something, is they're going to need to connect to that machine. And we give you 3 separate ways to do that. One is the screen connection that we talked about. We're going to show that last. We also have the ability to connect to the file system in a file system view, and Dave's going to show that one first. And then we'll show off a shell, interactive shell, which is the real shell on the machine. So if you're using Bash on Linux or on a Mac, or if you're using the C prompt in a command, or want to get to PowerShell in Windows, no problem, we're going to be able to do all of that. So this is what the file system view looks like. Now you'll notice it's very, very snappy. So as maybe Dave, start at the C drive just so people are maybe oriented here, and drive into users and then some specific user, maybe just go down a few files. You'll notice it's very, very quick for Dave to do this. And Dave has a lot of options here. So maybe he wants to grab one of those files. Let's say that log file down there, that end-user dat file. It doesn't really matter. We're just showing it for an example. But if he clicks on it, it immediately starts downloading that file. He also has the ability to upload files to any location, or upload or download lots of files, zipping them up, creating new folders, renaming folders. So all the sort of file management stuff that you'd want to do without having to necessarily interfere with someone who might be on the machine using it. So I actually use this when I'm dealing with servers, even though there's nobody that I'd be interfering with by logging into it directly. But it's also great if someone happens to be an end user on the computer and you just need to do something in the background. The same is true if we go to the shell. And again, I really like to emphasize that a lot of people don't know that if you connect and do remoting through WebSockets, there are a lot of speed benefits in terms of performance over long distances and other things that we've come to find. And you can see Dave is actively typing in here as if he was sitting right in the machine. But I happen to know, and I'll tell you now, this server is in Los Angeles. The machine that he's currently controlling, Demo W10, is in San Jose in Azure as a virtual machine. And Dave's in Pittsburgh, and so, or thereabouts. And so all of that round trip, going all the way to LA and up to San Francisco and back, and then projecting out to everyone here on GoToMeeting, is barely any sort of hindrance at all. So it's a much, much snappier system than a lot of remoting tools that are out there. And as we jump into the screen view, we even have some additional controls to deal with the fact that visualizations are always the heaviest bandwidth users. So as Dave goes in here and connects into this machine, you can see he's on the machine. He can do things on this web page he happens to have open in there. It's like he's sitting right in front of it. It's very quick. But one of the reasons that makes it easy to do that is we can actually control the quality of the video from long distance. It's a simple setting we have up in the top right. And you can change the quality to any percentage level that you like. So it's at 40% currently, and it doesn't even look that bad. I mean, I probably wouldn't watch Avatar on it, but I think for doing IT, it's nice to be able to change those settings and know that you're sending less bit data through the system. And we've seen a few clients really benefit from this when they had some lower bandwidth locations or people working from home. So really, really powerful. But there's a huge other set of tools in here. You can open any screens, people with different oriented screens. You can see all the services that are running from a quick, easy view command. You can do, Dave's doing a nice job there, spinning around the screen, because we do have customers that do trading and things like that, and they put their screen sideways. No problem, you can match that. You can see multiple screens at once. You can also have many IT people looking and controlling the same system at once. So if you're trying to teach something to like a whole team, or have a whole team or a couple of people from a team collaborate on solving something on one machine, that's going to be a very easy thing to do. And again, this is all included in the license, so it doesn't matter how many admins you have logging in. There's no additional price for this capability or for how many people you have using it. There's also a lot of other necessary tools, everything from interactive chat, so you can help end users from a support point of view, or sending shortcut key commands that are operating system dependent. You can see here we're on Windows, and you can see down there there's Control-Alt-Delete, but there's a bunch of other shortcut key commands that you might need to pass in there. You also might need to move the clipboard up and down. You can do that, and you can also type something in the screen so that you get a nice clean entry into the screen. Also, we do not have the problem that some endpoint tools have where they can't interact with things like passwords because of the screen protection capabilities. Running a system, we bypass that, so you have full control of the machine the entire time, including with interactives that pop up in things like Windows. So the other question we get a lot is, hey, I've used remoting on Linux and it's usually very bad. People kind of don't prioritize it. Well, we actually built this to be fully capable on all systems. So not all Linux machines have a UI, right? People choose to run them headless, as they say. But if you are using them as desktops like Ubuntu or Red Hat or something like that, that's not going to be a problem. You'll be able to use it with full screen controls and without it, kind of dying after a few days like some brands unfortunately do. And it also works great on Mac, even the very latest 12 versions. You can see your screen and all those things. Now, Mac does have that limitation where someone has to give the authority one time on the machine to allow for this kind of screen remoting. But that is a Mac thing, and that's true of every remoting tool out there. So we follow those same rules because there's really no way to get around it. And other than that, I think those are kind of the big keys on remoting, Dave. Is there anything you think I missed?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything.
Okay, well, I like to give people that run through of it because I use it all the time. It's extremely simple. We're always looking for new ways to add better functionality to it. But just here in our first year, we've achieved great things with it, and it's been a critical part of the tool as a whole. So thanks everybody for watching that section. We're going to move now into patching because we do a lot of things in patching, and one of the things that we've been very fortunate is that we've been able to achieve essentially bug-free patching for several years. And we did that by working with people that make the operating systems to make sure that we weren't stepping on their toes, so to say. In other words, following all the rules in their SDK, asking questions, and we found that's been very fruitful. And one of the reasons we really cared about that is we've seen some tools in the past run into some major problems when they didn't follow the guidance, and they put a lot of managed service providers and a lot of independent IT shops in bad situation by not being able to patch for months at a time. So that was our number one thing we wanted to avoid, was ever really running into problems with patching. But we also recognized we had to make it easy and sort of easy to figure out and easy to understand. So Dave, I was hoping maybe you could just walk through the patching system in some depth here, and maybe at the end we'll switch over to policies since they sort of interrelate with patching.
Yeah, that sounds good. So taking a look here, one thing I do want to point out is that our patching is going to not only influence your workstations and servers, it's also going to pick up those devices you've added via MDM. So here we can see at the very top, we have iOS update, right? And this is something we're going to cover second, but let's go ahead and just look at what it's like to patch through Windows. So one thing you want to take a look at here is the number of endpoints. I'm going to select a couple endpoints, or a couple patches, excuse me. Then I'll go to Actions and Install. And what you'll see here is we have our patches we selected up top, and then it's only going to show the endpoints that need that patch in this table here. So we can see some need 7, some only need 1, right? So let's go ahead and select all of these. And then we get to our schedule execution time. So by default, it's going to try to install immediately. What that means is if the device is online, like these 4 here, they'll get the patch. If a device is offline, like this server here, then that patch will fail on this device. It won't retry. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, you want to use Run When Connected. With this, it'll install it on your computer if you're available now. And if you're not, it'll queue it until next time you are available. That's usually the option I pick. We also have the ability to schedule patches by time. So you can come in here and pick a date and a time, and then the patch job will kick off on these machines at that time. Then we also have relentless mode. And John, this was one of the additions from a current customer. Do you want to kind of speak on that?
Yeah, so this is actually goes back a couple of years, almost 2.5 years, and we had someone looking at the software who since bought it. Maybe it's because we made the feature they asked us to make, but I really wish I had thought of this idea. I always tell people that, but I kind of had an aha moment when they brought this up. They said, I don't, work. Maybe our company. They said maybe our company is different. We have to get patching approved at a particular time, like once a month on the weekend. And if anything isn't working or is still patching outside of that time, it is not received very well by management, which is totally understandable. And I sat there thinking, like, I can't believe we never thought of making a patch window. That seems so smart. So that was the first part of the idea. But he went on to say, the other problem that I have is that the way we're doing patching now, or the tool that we have, I run some patches, and if it does a reboot, I have to go run another job. It doesn't just pick up where it left off like automatic updates does, except I don't want to do automatic updates because I want to pick the specific patches that I'm going to run against my servers. And that makes a lot of sense to me because patching can be a very dangerous enterprise and you want to have a lot of control over it. So relentless mode was born from these two ideas being bound together. So with relentless mode, right, you can patch in any window and no tasks will happen outside that window. They obviously won't start till the beginning and they won't continue after the end. So this means that you can patch, and if you have a lot of backed up patches, you can schedule it to happen in that time and it will do as many of the patches as you've selected against all of the machines you've selected until the time runs out. Now, if the time runs out, you might have to do another job the following weekend, but at least you will have gotten the maximum amount done, right? And then the other part is, and what makes it really relentless, is the fact that if it reboots, the job just keeps going. And it's very intelligent. It knows exactly what patches to do, in what order, and when to do the reboots based on how these systems were written by the operating system makers. So you do have some controls here, similarly as Dave was talking about before, where when you install immediately or at a particular time or on a run when connected, you'll have the ability to not have the reboots done and leave that to the end user within some controlled parameters, like they don't have to reboot now, but they will within, say, 5 days or something like that. But with relentless mode, what you're really usually trying to do here is patch things that have a backlog of patches or servers, and you'll get exactly the patches you want in exactly the time you want. And yes, you can choose that last setting not to reboot, but it's not going to get a lot done. I don't see people using it much, but it is an option. At least you can do a basic patch within a very controlled window. And then the other thing, and we have some people that have machines that they're a little leaky on memory. And so we do have that middle option too, to force reboots on machines when they're done patching, even if the patches didn't require a reboot, sort of a memory refresh type function. 99% of the time, though, I see people, including myself, using that first checkbox, and that works really well. So I do love relentless mode, and the big aha moment was how great the feature requests we get are from our community. So we do try to stay really in touch with people who use Bacon, because I'd say at this point, they've probably come up with maybe half or more than half of the great features that are in here. These are our colleagues. These are the people that are doing the kind of work that we've done over our careers every day. And so we're always very, very hungry for your feedback. And if you have any great ideas for our software, we'd certainly appreciate it. You can throw it in the survey or hit us up by email later. With that said, we did talk a little bit about policies, Dave. I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to show in patching before we started talking about the policies that impact patching, but you tell me.
Only thing I wanted to cover is actually just what patching looks like for that iOS device we saw earlier. But right after
Oh, good
that, yeah, we can go
idea.
over
Yeah,
to,
let's do that, and then we'll jump to the policies.
all right, go ahead and back to our patching view here. So we saw how patching works for Windows. When it comes to Mac OS and Linux, it's going to look basically identical, just the patches you're installing will look different. If we look at the one for mobile, oops, misclick there. Let's choose to install this patch. Now we have one device with this patch available, but we're going to have to look at the MDM devices side of things here. And here we'll see we have an iPhone. So much like the other view, you'll see your patches up top, the eligible devices right below. And then we have a little bit different. So this is going to be for MDM device scheduling, not so much with like a scheduling time. So your default's just going to send that job out to that device. Download is going to give you the option for the user to install it on their own. It'll just download it to the device. And then install ASAP is going to prioritize this job whenever you do send it out. So again, it's very simple. It's basically a button click, and then you choose your schedule and you install. So that's mainly what I wanted to cover, John. We can actually move on to, let's say, profiles. We'll look at how we can influence Windows Update, right? That kind of goes back to patching and
Yeah,
maybe use, or
I think that's a
yeah,
good
go
place
ahead.
to start, but I may pause you for a minute just to give people a quick understanding of how we think about these profiles and why they're so dynamic. I think the key thing, to focus on, maybe if you just click on the profiles top section there, yeah, that's perfect. So these are lists of profiles, and when we're dealing with profiles, we kind of have three things to talk about. One is going to be the profile itself in terms of endpoints, and so that means you want to do something on endpoints and you want it to happen in some sort of continuous time. So Dave sort of hovered over the refresh rate there. You can go down to a minute, but most things that you're doing, maybe hourly is probably good. Some things are once a day, some things are once a week. But if I'm doing something really security sensitive, like locking down USB drives, I'll set it to 1 minute because basically I want this setting to be checked on, monitored, and alerted on every minute or so to know that that's stayed locked. The danger of having USB drives on workstations and laptops that are out there in the field can be very bad for a lot of businesses and raise security risks. Some of our existing clients are some of the largest companies in the media and broadcasting industries, and the content they have is very expensive. So not allowing USB and quite frankly any other remote storage devices is a key part of their strategy, and they use Bacon to prevent that from happening. And so Bacon is so intelligent that not only is it check on it and checks on these settings, but it knows if they've changed, it knows if they've gone into practice in the first place, and it informs you if any of those things happen. So if USB's been off for a week and everything's fine, there's not going to be any alerts or anything bugging you. But if it comes out of compliance, you will learn about it. So profiles, the whole idea is that you can set the settings on your machines. I use that one example. It could also be a setting like I want to have this certain version of Firefox installed that always works with my web application. Okay, no problem. Or it could be setting firewalls, which Dave's going to show you today. And the thing is that to do that, all you have to do is write the profile, which is the sort of control mechanism, and then you have to put the states in that profile that do the different things you want it to do. So with that, Dave, I hope that's at least a good high-level concept. We'll get into MDM profiles later. That's a sort of a separate way of doing things. But for now, why don't you give us some sense for how these work and some examples that we can dig into to really open this up for people.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go ahead and get started, excuse me, with Windows Update based ones. So previously we were looking at patching. That's going to be an intentional action, right? You're going to come into here, you're going to patch your devices, and that was something you chose to do at that time. What if we want some automation, right? We want to have our patches deploy in these systems at a specific day, maybe change how Windows Update works. That's where these states come in. So if I take a look at the very first one here, this is an LGPO for configuring, excuse me, automatic updates. So this is pulled directly from LGPO in Windows. So if you were to open this on your machine now, you'll actually be able to see these same exact settings on that page. So here we can configure automatic updates. In this case, we've chosen to auto download and schedule the install. Then we can also choose some really specific settings. We can choose what day we want it to run on, what time, and even if we want it to run every week or maybe a specific week of that month. So here it's the fourth week of the month, every Saturday at 12. Right, so this is another way to do your patching. If you're not really concerned with which patches are going out, or these are maybe test machines or just safe machines that are okay to keep patched up, you can specify it this way. We also have ways to specify the kind of patches. Maybe you want to apply this thing only to the most critical Defender updates, but you don't want to have drivers just apply all the time. We can do that too. If we keep looking through the different states we have available, we also have things like setting up notification options. So do we want our users to get notifications? In this case, we've disabled all notifications except for restart warnings. And so this is kind of a format that we've outlined for you here in some comment to text, right? And I really see that after maybe making one or two, which is something we help you with, you're able to come in here and just edit these. We've actually built these out into our GitHub repository. So we have all the LGPOs available for you to just download and then edit this option here.
Yeah, I think a good thing to remark on here, Dave, is not only do we offer building this and teaching people at no cost, it comes with your subscription. So you're essentially getting an added DevOps team along with this license. And we've got a lot of really sophisticated engineers to help with these kinds of issues. We know that sometimes writing a little YAML file, even if it's only a few lines, may not be, in your wheelhouse. And so using the built ones that we've already made, there's about 4,500 of them, I think, so far, mostly will get you there. But sometimes you have questions or you need to write a custom one. We'll do that for you at no cost. It's actually been one of our favorite things to help customers with. I think it's really helped us build great relationships with people and come up with new cool ideas for things to control in environments. The other thing that you mentioned, Dave, I think is the fact that these profiles will automatically be monitored, right? So if you set these settings on an LGPO, the really cool thing is I've worked with Microsoft since they started making GPOs. Well, one, you really need to use Active Directory group policy to centrally manage that. Well, with Bacon, if you don't really want to manage centrally with group policy, that's fine. And also, if you do, and you just want to use Bacon to verify that they're there, we offer something that unfortunately Microsoft never has, even though I've always wished they had, which is the ability to easily monitor the compliance. Like, I want to know that if I put it against 250 Windows computers, that rule actually took place. And then I want to know that it stayed in place and stayed in compliance. In this day and age of security, you need to be able to control a huge amount of settings on your machines to meet a lot of different compliance standards, whether they're sort of legally required for your business or whether they happen to be part of a goal of being very secure, maybe by matching the CIS top 18 or NIST A71 or something like that. All of these things can be done using Bacon, and not just to patch and audit, but to stay in that auditable state all the way along. And so we do see this used a lot for security. We actually have a really nice new testimonial coming out soon, which will be on our webpage along with the others we already have up there, where a company is using this to control all of their security settings related to endpoint management because they are in the CMMC sort of FedRAMP cycle. So if that's something that you need to do or just want to have really good security, Bacon is a great way to ensure that you're meeting that kind of compliance. What's another set of states we can show off, Dave, so people can see some examples of the variability here?
Well, on that same kind of security thing, we can take a look at the states that we use to configure firewalls. How's that sound?
I think that's great. Yeah, I think Mac and Linux firewalls, we've covered a lot of Windows stuff so far, but we actually are using this a lot on Mac and Linux, and we've really created feature parity here. So Dave's going to go through a couple of ways that we are doing the firewalls. Take it away.
Yeah, sure. So here I've opened up our setup for IP tables. So this is going to allow you to add these different rules, right? And it's pretty simple to manage because most often you're going to set these rules whenever you get a new application or maybe a new deployment. And these are all available in one place. So if I push these out to 30 servers, I can come back to this central location to see what rules were pushed out rather than having to go to each server and then kind of mix all those different outputs together and figure out who's different, that kind of thing. So here we can see we're able to allow ping, right? That's what we're seeing here, ICMP echo requests. We can allow incoming HTTP and SSH connections. This is all fairly readable. Again, remember, this is a template, and so you're able to just swap out this port here. Maybe we have a custom thing on 8080. We can change that or change TCP to UDP. And so we're configuring the entire IP table setup with this state here. If we take a look at the Mac OS side of things, you're going to see something very similar. So this is using PF. And so we have 3 different states we've created. We have one to enable, one to actually update the configuration, and one to refresh. So if we
Hey,
take a look
Dave,
here, yeah, go ahead.
I want to cut in on one thing you said there, just because I think a lot of people don't even know that PF, which is the packet filter, is underneath the Mac firewall. If you've gone into your Mac OS machines and you've noticed that the firewall settings that are available through your GUI are very limited, like it just says you can kind of control what apps can work and things like that, it doesn't seem like much of a firewall at all. And actually, what's really amazing is there is a full PF packet filter firewall, which is the old Unix firewall, which is the real underpinning capability of the Mac. And it is intended to be worked with, if you're an administrator, from the command line. And while there's nothing wrong with working from the command line, it is something that ends up putting people in a position to work on one machine kind of at a time and not have an easy way to verify it. With the packet filter, you can virtually control anything you could on any Edge firewall or on a Windows firewall or the Linux firewall that Dave was just showing in the previous example. So I just wanted to bring that up, just so in case people didn't really know what PF is. I know a lot of people who manage Macs don't even know that that's actually what's happening under the hood. So maybe walk through, this is actually probably the best rule to explain, if you wouldn't mind walking through it.
Absolutely. And yeah, thanks for that. That's a really good thing to point out too, because it's not immediately obvious how it works and why we're doing it this way. So what we're looking at here is the very first thing we saw was how to enable packet filter. Next up, we're actually using a config file. And this is a file that we've uploaded to Bacon. So when we see this source link here, this is actually a URL you can copy from the file repository to reference this file in a state. So this will be downloaded to the machine and it'll be put in the etc directory named pf.conf for the file name. Right, and then we can see here it won't create the directory if it doesn't exist, and if this file's already in place, it will replace it, which means that if I was to make changes to that configuration, next time our profile runs with this state, it'll then rewrite or overwrite this file. So if I take a look in our repo, here's our config file, and like I said earlier, you can click on Actions to copy that link when you're writing states. Then inside the file, we actually have our configuration here. So you can see we have a block all at the very top. And then as we go through here, again, we're allowing ICMP, we're allowing different ranges of ports, right? We have a 4504 to 4509. So it's going to enable all the Bacon ports we need. And so it really is that simple. In this case, we can just come here and update this file rather than the state itself, and then it'll automatically push out the latest version next time that profile applies.
Yeah, that's every minute. It'll do it every minute. And what I like, Dave, is because I don't actually like it to update every minute. It's just more chatter between the machines, even though Bacon is super efficient on communication, right? It's still just a lot of chatter. So I'll set it for an hour, but if I have a critical firewall rule that I need to update to 500 max, I can make that change in here and I can go change it in the schedule. I mean, maybe just show that in where that is in the logs.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look.
And
The logs
voila.
necessarily will be a little bit different.
Yeah, so if you come in here and there's a schedule set for this particular job, then you don't have to wait until the next time it's going to come up. You can go ahead and push it from here just by going over to the actions button. Pretty straightforward. You just run it now, and then the schedule will continue as usual. So I just always like showing that because it's extremely simple to manage, tons of machines, thousands if you want. And you don't have to do all the same config, right? You could do 10 different configs for a bunch of different machine types and groups and things like that. There's just a lot of capabilities here to meet your requirements. And one of the things we hope to do at Bacon is help you find the best ways to use the tool. So I think with that, Dave, just because we're getting down to the end of time here, we'll close it out. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about before we send it back to Caitlin?
No, I think we're good. I mean, we've covered a quick overview, right? We've done a couple highlights now, moving back to the basics of how do we use Bacon. Right, a little bit of a departure from our MDM focused one. So no, I think it's a pretty good showing.
Great. Well, I hope you all can join us on our YouTube channel and check out other functions if they're of interest to you. And certainly if you have questions or would like to follow up with us and get an in-person, I keep saying in-person, but I mean a personal demo one-on-one, we're very happy to do that. It's always great to get your ideas and to see if we can solve your problems. And with that, I send it back to you, Caitlin.
Thanks, John, and thank you all for your time today. Our Bacon Unlimited team will be reaching out to all of you to set up personalized demos, so be on the lookout via phone and email. And also don't forget to fill out our post-event survey so we can include a t-shirt along with your Bacon swag. And have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.